I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is John Klyczek. First, be sure and check out my films. October spooky season is the perfect time to watch those. Doors of Perception is available on Amazon Prime. Occult Louisiana is available on Tubi, Roku Channel, Apple, and more. We are booking guests for December. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show John Klyczek. He is author of School World Order, The Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. John, welcome back. How you doing?
Doing okay, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming back on. Today we're going to be sharing information from a recent article you published on Unlimited Hangout titled From Project 2025 to the PayPal Presidency, School Choice FinTech for a Blockchain Social Credit Economy. There's a lot to get to with this, and most people hear things like Project 2025, these other agendas that are rolling out, and because there's this brainwashing that's occurred with a lot of the conservative right now that Trump and this administration can't do any wrong, and they're just letting all these agendas roll out gladly, not questioning anything, not looking any deeper into some of this stuff, which you have done a great job doing. We're going to get to that. Before we do, it's been a little while since you've been on. Remind the audience just a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more.
Yeah, so I'm the author of School World Order, The Technocratic Globalization of Corporatized Education. I published that in 2019. Really took off during the lockdown years. The foreword was written by my mentor, Charlotte Thompson Iserbeat. She also wrote the famous Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. She worked in the Department of Education under Ronald Reagan. She blew the whistle on this technology project known as Project BEST. So that's Basic Education Skills Through Technology. And it was this plot to set up public-private partnerships between the Department of Education and big tech corporations in order to implement computerized programmed instruction that would use operant conditioning algorithms to psychologically condition students for workforce training in a planned economy. And so that's sort of my background. She passed away in 2022, and what you see behind you now, I don't know if you saw this before, Chris. I think last time I still had my old setup, which this was behind me with a curtain, which the curtain was back there, and now that's Charlotte's library. Most of it is. There's on. I'd say about 90+% of it, and then I got a bunch of her files and stuff, and so people can check out if you want to subscribe to my database. I upload her files, about every month, and sometimes I do a bonus. So that's a good overview. And I'm a public educator. I've been teaching at the college level for since about 2010. So it's getting close to 15 years now.
Right on. Thank you for the intro. I'm looking forward to getting into this because, like I said earlier, people hear things like Project 2025, one big beautiful bill, and they get excited because it's Trump doing this, and Trump can't do any wrong, and we just have to blindly allow whatever agenda he's trying to put forward go through because he's going to save us all. But in reality, there is a lot behind what is rolling out right now. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem that education is one of those big issues that people are looking into at all. But let's get into your article. Tell us a little bit about what you focused on.
So this article is building on a piece that I wrote I think it was published in February earlier this year. And that was just looking at how the Trump administration was pursuing the school choice provisions that were put forth in Project 2025. And so those would be two particular provisions. So one is back in the day, we used to call these school choice provisions vouchers. So they're taking public monies and they're sending them to private institutions. So the vouchers were typically for private schools, religious or parochial. Now they've got these other mechanisms known as education savings accounts and then tax credited scholarships. These are not the same as the education savings accounts that have been codified under the IRS for forever. And these are not scholarships like you would just earn based on merit. These are basically what they call neo vouchers. And so what I saw was that a lot of the people that were promoting these policies were also, well, not just in particular the authors of Project 2025's Department of Education chapter, but the think tanks behind that project and those authors. And so these are a consortium of what are known as the State Policy Network think tanks. So that's a consortium of think tanks that are funded by dark money, largely from the Koch brothers. And these include American Enterprise Institute, American Legislative Exchange Council, Cato Institute, EdChoice, and the Heritage Foundation is a good cross section of all of those. So what I focused on in this most recent piece was, as I was doing the research for the prior one, I'd noticed that a lot of the individuals, some of them that are directly involved in the Project 2025, but certainly the think tanks behind it, were promoting the use of digital wallets to distribute those school choice funds. And, you know, it really stuck out to me because I'd noticed that we all are also witnessing the rise of the stable coin sort of blockchain crypto economy. And so what you see here in this piece is sort of the convergence of like the old school arm of the Republican establishment, that being like the neoconservative Beltway libertarian think tanks that I just named, and then sort of the new arm, the futurist kind of Silicon Valley arm that is basic of the Republican establishment. That's basically the epicenter is the PayPal mafia, in particular people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, David Sachs, and then others in that orbit such as Mark Andreessen. So that's sort of a decent overview of the piece, basically looking at the convergence of those two arms of the Republican Party, pushing this new public-private school choice partnerships to bring in blockchain stable coins that you could then data mine social credit analytics from.
Right on. Well, let's get deeper into that and reasons why people really need to dig into this and pay more attention. You mentioned the social credit aspect. This is baked into everything. This is a huge part of it, right?
Yeah. So the social credit element here is going to come in through basically the feedback loops between the financial technology or fintech inputs and then the education technology or edtech outcomes. So basically, by hooking up artificial intelligence to the digital wallets, you can sort of data mine basically what are the best voucher programs, or what are the best ways to spend these stablecoin tokens in terms of education to get the best outcomes, right? And so basically, based on how well the student performs on the EdTech products or those vouchers, right? The neo vouchers, we'll say, the education savings accounts and the tax credited scholarships. These can be used for more than just tuition for a private school, right? They can also be used for a basket of other educational products and services. So these include various EdTech products that I'm sure we've discussed on our prior episodes, but maybe we'll dive into that later when we talk about sort of how the PayPal mafia is invested in those as well. But from those fintech digital wallets, the student gets the money. They purchase an EdTech product. The data comes out to show what they've learned and what career pathway they should be put on, what curriculums and modules they'll need to achieve the objectives of that career pathway. And then based on how well that student performs, right, the feedback is going to be where the distributors of the voucher, neo voucher monies are going to look at what's the best way to, or what are the best products and services that those second set of school choice funds should be programmed for. So the stable coins are basically they're cryptocurrencies that are backed 1-to-1 with the US dollar. But they have all the negatives of a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. So that means programmable, trackable, traceable. So those ESAs and scholarships, the neo vouchers, with the stable coins, you could program them so that they can only be used to purchase certain ed tech products and services. And that programming would be based, again, right, on that feedback loop, right? Like, so based on how well the student does, that's going to determine what types of coins they get and what those coins can be used for. And then based on how they perform on those purchases, right? And you continue that, and then you get these predictive analytics that tells the student, this is the career pathway that you have to move through.
Talk a little bit more about fintech and its role with all of this.
Yeah. So, fintech as a broader industry, I mean, the origins are essentially come straight out of the PayPal mafia. And so, if we go back to the origins, we could look at something like FieldLink, which is more or less the first commercially available platform for online purchases. PayPal was sort of the first for like peer-to-peer, but FieldLink became Confinity, and then Confinity was merged with X.com. That was Elon Musk's fintech platform before he basically rebranded all of his new companies under the X motto, including the former Twitter. So Elon Musk's Confinity and X.com, they get merged together to form PayPal. Later, PayPal merges with eBay, Mark Andreessen being on the board of directors there. And PayPal sort of was, I guess, the foot in the door for the digital wallet industry. And so now we have sort of an array of digital wallet companies that are sort of expanding on this infrastructure, putting in place the necessary pieces where we can install the blockchain distributed ledger technology. So that means that, right, instead of just a digital wallet being a way to transfer funds, right, the digital ledger, the blockchain ledger has embedded in it basically data tracking for all the metadata for who, what, where, and when, who took the funds, where it was transferred to, when it was transferred, how much it was transferred, what product was, all that data can be logged on this blockchain ledger, which then can be dual purposed as essentially a digital ID, and especially in the realm of social credit, right? But also in education. And so this digital wallet industry is basically putting in the next building block that's going to enable the new stable coins to be the main medium of currency, so to speak, to distribute not just education funds, school choice funds, but a company like Class Wallet, which is a digital wallet company. This one started specializing in education funds, but then if you go to the website, they're branching out into emergency relief funds through FEMA, housing vouchers through HUD, like health tokens through HHS. So they're going to be branching out to essentially facilitate or distribute public funds from all government agencies. And if you look at another company, digital wallet company known as Benefit Wallet, that's sort of an inverse case where it began focusing on health savings accounts, distributing basically healthcare monies, and then it branched out into school choice money. So what we see is that, right, if we zoom in on school choice and the digital wallet sort of infrastructure there, it's just one aspect of this broader fintech overhaul throughout the entire economy, especially beginning with and emphasizing the public end of the public-private economy, so to speak.
So they're basically paving the way for this technocratic takeover of everything, but what we're talking about is just a small focus on the education system, but it has the capability for larger and broader applications. Talk a little bit about the involvement with companies like Palantir, Peter Thiel, the integration of AI with not only education systems, but law enforcement, things like that. This is all interconnected, right?
Yeah. So when I first wrote my book and I started looking at sort of the ways that some of the education technologies, some of them were used for like assistive technologies. So this means for students with disabilities. So they would basically qualify as like healthcare technologies. So that would be under HIPAA instead of FERPA. And so as I'm looking at it, I'm going like, well, what there's going to have to be some legislative overhauls here to right. I mean, because you can't mix those two baskets. But what I saw was where just the ed tech industry, once all those pieces got sort of mainlined, that you would be sort of conflating health and education and criminal justice together. And so it was when I got a peek at the sort of the Journeyman TV documentary that showcased the Chinese social credit system, was when I was like, oh, that's what it's going to look like when it all comes together. And what I'm looking at here in education is just basically one part of that ledger, one part of that ubiquitous, comprehensive biopsychosocial ledger. And so at all of these things that I'm discussing in education that I'm focusing on in my wheelhouse, similar things are happening in healthcare, and similar things are happening in criminal justice, and all those things are going to converge into, again, right? All those different data tracks, all those different parts of the ledger are going to be part of one digital ID, one profile. So you asked, how does sort of the Theoverse fit into this? Well, as far as the fintech, and these characters are all invested in the ed tech as well. But let's focus on the fintech for just a second. If you look at a company like Odyssey and Merit International is a good sort of case study or studies. So Odyssey, digital wallet company, is funded by Andreessen Horowitz. That's Mark Andreessen's venture capital firm. It's also funded by Bling Capital and Tusk Venture Partners. Now, Tusk Venture Partners, along with Andreessen Horowitz, they both share common investments with Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, and Bling Capital is invested in Palantir, which is Peter Thiel's AI analytics company. Then Mark Andreessen's VC, his Andreessen Horowitz, is also finances Merit International, along with Alumni Ventures, and Alumni Ventures also has common investments with Peter Thiel's Founders Fund. So that's just one sort of a cross section, kind of zooming in to see sort of how the venture capital firms of Thiel and his PayPal technocrat buddies are invested in these digital wallet companies. But if we look at, there's several ed tech products, they're invested in these as well. So, right, on the fintech input end and on the ed tech outcome end. So company like Newton and Clever, these are adaptive learning courseware companies. I'm pretty sure we talked about the Skinner box and how that was the analog version of what is today the digital teaching machine, right? The adaptive learning courseware that uses those operant conditioning algorithms that I mentioned. Charlotte blew the whistle on in Project Best. And so Peter Thiel funds Newton and Clever. There's another one called Symbo Lab that has been acquired by Course Hero being funded by David Sacks's. Then you have the biofeedback wearable technologies. So still uses stimulus response and operant conditioning, but instead of cognitive, behavioral, or thinking algorithms like the adaptive learning courseware data mines, the biofeedback wearables are data mining the emotional algorithm. So they're going to infer emotions based on data mining the student's heart rate, brain waves, the galvanic skin response, which is basically electrical conductivity, and then also making inferences about emotion based on facial recognition scans. So a company called Effectiva, which largely they emphasize on the facial recognition, social emotional learning stuff. But they did have a GSR bracelet at one point, galvanic skin response bracelet. I don't know if they still have it. But that company is partners with, co-creates online content with a online learning platform called Udacity being funded by Mark Andreessen. And then sort of at the apex of the pyramid, if you look at my book, sort of what I lay out is the progression of a series of evolving technologies, moving from screen-based adaptive learning courseware to wearable social emotional learning biofeedback devices, eventually to implantables. But in the interim, right, the cognitive, behavioral, and social emotional algorithms get data mined, aggregated, fed through machine learning and deep learning into a large language model through neural networks, and you get generative AI. So we're essentially getting close to the end of the book here. But in something like OpenAI, which has its own basically tutor bot, and then it provides that service to Khan Academy for its tutor bot known as Khan Migo, it can do all that stuff. It can data mine the brain waves, I'm sorry, the social emotional algorithms and the cognitive behavioral algorithms while also interacting with the student through natural language. And OpenAI is founded by Elon Musk, and Elon Musk has also funded Khan Academy, which uses OpenAI. So the PayPal mafiosos are invested in both ends of that feedback loop analytics, and then obviously the AI as well with somebody like David Sachs. I mean, so Thiel's Palantir, we noted. Musk's OpenAI, we noted. Something else worth noting is that David Sachs was appointed under Trump as the White House AI and crypto czar. And actually, under his senior policy advisor for AI, Sri Ram Krishnan, he used to work for Mark Andreessen. And so you have in charge of the AI policy at the White House, you have PayPal Mafia folk as well.
Let's break this down for people like myself that aren't technologically educated and aren't invested a lot with this techno stuff, but would really benefit from knowing more about it. When we're talking about things like fintech and edtech, maybe we could break this down and give real-world examples of how this would look being implemented into a parent's life.
Yeah, I think I'll give you an anecdotal example. This is actually for college students, but this is available for our different institutions. So I'm one of the schools where I teach. I just got a big chunk of my hours replaced by an AI bot known as Anna, and it comes from a company called Upswing, and it also does mental health services, by the way, with the same bot. It's not two bots. You don't get an ed tech bot. And this is what I was talking about when I was like, how are they going to do this? Because technically, like for anybody that's taught, you'll know that like if a student has disabilities, you can't even ask them. Like you put on the syllabus, if you have a disability, go tell the disability services, and then they will provide me with your accommodations because, right, that's a violation of HIPAA if I start asking people about their medical records, right? So I can't do that as a teacher, but the bot can, right?
Yeah.
And so, but the thing about this thing is, so basically what I think they're going to have is you're going to have a bot that'll follow you around because basically this thing can do everything that, as I mentioned, the adaptive learning, the screen-based stuff and the wearable stuff, they're just more or less just building blocks. Now, if you use the AI bot, you kind of got it following you around. It's supposed to, this one that they have hired is supposed to help the students like with everything from daily planning, organizing, to actual tutoring. It could be any discipline, and the mental health services as well. But basically this thing, it's one of the things that it promotes is that it keeps track of all the outcomes and the progress. Well, that's the feedback loop. That's the adaptive learning stuff, right? And they boast that they can do it not just by, this is part of the selling point for the school. So it's not just individual analytics for each student, but they can do it by group. So like age, maybe freshman, sophomore, etc., race, gender, sexuality, institution-wide, all this. So they can get all these different sets of data, not just for the student to help, to keep track of the student's improvement, but for the institution to keep track of the improvement. And I don't want to digress, but maybe we'll talk about how that relates to impact investing and sort of the securitization of human beings. But I think that where we're going with this is going to be basically. I saw. I talked to my guy that cuts my hair. He mentioned Mark Zuckerberg just recently showcased this new set of Meta goggles, and they can basically, as far as I understand, you can prompt the AI through the AR. You can make FaceTime calls through your goggles, but apparently you can think it. So I don't know how that works, but it sounds like it has an EEG built into it. So basically I would guess this is how it works. If I verbally command the glass, say, hey, call Bob, right? And it sees that, right? And it hears the command. Well, if it's got the EEG, right, implanted in the stem of the glasses, and it can read my brainwaves, then it can pick up on the signal, right, of the electrical patterns in my brain when I speak that. So then if I keep my mouth shut and I say it in my head, right, it should light up essentially those same signals. And so this is how it can make this inference. Now, my point in bringing this up is, I think we're getting close to the point where, and this is, this is all in the book. Like I said, we'll get to the end of it here. It's all, I started writing it in 2016. So it's like, it was a future forecast. It's like 10 years
Moving
forward, but
fast, man.
So essentially what you'll have is, I mean, and this is basically what these glasses have. There's an AI bot in it, right? It's got basically the social emotional, for ed tech, that's what will be called. But in like fitness, it's basically just a Fitbit, right? It's doing the same thing. It's just what types of metrics are you trying to infer from it? And the thing can keep track of, your daily, activities. So it can track the patterns and, if you're trying to help it. That's what you'll have. You'll have some bot that follows you around all day on some kind of a wearable, whether it's goggles or a set of wearables. Maybe you can help the bot get more data if you have a ring and a watch and, all the different things to get the heart, get a more precise reading of all the different biometrics. But that's where we're going, and we're pretty close. We're pretty close to it now. But if you wanted more practical examples of what that has looked like, it probably didn't look like much, especially in the early days of like the adaptive learning platforms like Conmigo and things like that have, just sort of these online modules, because most of the things that I'm talking about is happening on the back end of it. So people, I think people probably, it seems as innocuous to some as behavioral advertising feels to a lot of people in general, right? So it's like, you're using your Facebook or your social media, you're on, and these same types of algorithms. If you look at a company like Dreambox, they say that their adaptive learning algorithms that basically do the predictive analytics and personalized learning and all that, they're not just based on Skinner's operating conditioning algorithms. He says they're effectively the same as the behavioral advertising algorithms that like Netflix and Amazon use. So, it's effectively the same thing. It's just instead of the feedback loop offering you products that you might like to buy or videos that you might like to watch, it's going to offer you the next lesson that it thinks you need to get to the career pathway that it thinks you are best suited for, right? And so the wearables, that isn't something that probably a lot of parents have seen like as embedded in basic, those basic modules that might have the adaptive learning algorithm in it. But where you might have seen it is for helping, again, this is where it would be assistive technology, would be like at one school where I teach at the wellness center, we use heart math. And heart math it's an EKG wearable. It data mines the heart rate, but basically the way it's pitched for schools, it's used not just for schools. It's used for like business meetings and things like that, like spirituality. There's kind of a new age global coherence initiative that's a whole separate use for this. But I don't want to digress into that. But what they do is they put it on. It's got a trademarked breathing meditation. So apparently you got to get trained to be a heart math coach, and you can't teach the breathing to somebody because that's that's owned, patented, or whatever, trademarked. But so you give the student the wearable and they breathe, and the device is going to tell the student as if you couldn't feel that you're less anxious, that your heart rate has lowered. But maybe if you're super anxious you can't, and maybe it helps you like dial it in, but it's going to tell you, hey, your heart rate is level enough, now you should try it, now you're good to take the test, right? So before you go to take the test, you sit down, you do this thing, and once it goes into, I guess, what they call heart coherence, then the wellness coordinator would come in and like, okay, test time, right? And so those are two like more practical, immediate examples of what some of these technologies look like. But I think we're getting very close to the place where the student's going to have a personalized AI bot that follows it around through a series of devices, and it's pulling all that data and personalizing what the student is allowed to learn based on that.
This sounds like science fiction. It's essentially already here, but our data seems to be the new currency, and it seems to be the most important thing the parasitic ruling class is after with these biofeedback wearables. People don't realize that this is going to be used against them in every way possible. It's going to be integrated with the social credit nonsense, with the new healthcare, which is probably going to be integrated with AI and all this other nonsense that we're talking about as well. And there will be no escape from that system if you want to participate with certain things.
Yeah, I mean, to your point about the healthcare, I mean, let's zoom in on that for just a second, because I've actually written about the precision medicine initiative that Obama pushed forward, and the emphasis on this was largely, again, personalized medicine. Now, the emphasis was largely on, that means gene-based. So, right, we're going to give you a personalized treatment based on your DNA signatures. Now, part of this, though, is also the AI analytics. And there was a part of the precision medicine initiative was like an offshoot project called All of Us, and that was headed by a guy by the name of Eric Dishman. And Eric Dishman got his the reason why he was signed up for the precision medicine initiative and All of Us was that his background was in developing smart homes for like veterans and Alzheimer's patients. And so, right, people that can't remember to take their medicine and things like that, it had all these sensors and things to remind them. Okay, so he has had a background in sort of creating, an AI environment that could data mine people's behaviors, or at least track them and keep track of it. So what the All of Us wanted to do is this is basically an epigenetic project. Okay, so that means that they wanted to have people use wearables. Remember, Bobby recently said this. He recently said that he wants everybody to use the wearables, and that way they can, right? And so, and when I heard, I'd known for a while that he was invested in some AI and impact and investing in things like that, where it was kind of like, I mean, let's give him a chance and see what he does, right? Because I liked his stance on the lockdowns, and I was like, keeping my eye on it, and pretty quickly early on, I was like, I think he's going to go with this Dishman project. And if you go back to my interviews, you can see that I kind of called it before he officially announced it. But that's what it is. It's the same thing. So basically what they're going to do is based on, they'll scan your genes, right? Because genetic expression is not necessarily causative, right? Right. Like if you have the BCR or whatever the breast cancer gene, right? It doesn't mean you're going to have breast cancer. It means you are more susceptible to it, right? And right, so what they want to figure out is what types of behaviors, environments, lifestyles, consumption habits, etc., trigger the expression of a particular gene. So they scan you, they go, oh, you've got these genetic proclivities. They watch you put the wearables on, they see, how much you exercise, what are you eating, how much sunlight do you get, all this type of stuff. And then they're going to go based on that, right? They're going to try to figure out what are these things that trigger those expressions. And I think that one of the ways that they'll get people to on board with this is they'll tokenize it. So, first to get you to have them put them on, like you get a deal on your insurance rates, right? It'll be kind of like, have you ever seen, this was like foot in the door for social credit a long time ago, the smart or safe driving.
Yeah.
So the insurance. Yeah. So it's like, you only get penalized when you do bad stuff, but what if you do so good all the time? Shouldn't you earn points for that? And that's how they'll do medical insurance. They'll be like, hey, we'll bring your rates down if you show us that, you eat right, you exercise. So put these wearables on, you can earn points, right? And then, or tokens, however they want to monetize and quantify it, right? But again, this is just going to be part of your ledger. So you're going to have the education does it. You're going to have, and they have wearables for the workforce stuff too. I think they call it boss wear. So like, especially if you're doing online work, they want to make sure you're not on Facebook or daydreaming. So you put earbuds in, the EEG wearable, and somehow it's going to infer that whether or not you're paying attention. Just as a side note, I do have to say that I'm very skeptical of the accuracy of the inferences you can make based on things like heart rate and brainwave and facial expression. Because especially me, especially if I'm in front reading or writing, like I look angry sometimes. Like, and people be like, "Yeah, he always looks." He's like, "Oh, he's the nicest guy though." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just like, I'm focused." You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like, if people look at me and think that when I'm thinking hard about a problem or I'm focused, that I look upset. Like, what's the AI gonna do? Like, it's gonna get some kind of a red flag goes off because I'm thinking too hard or something. So sorry, that's like a side note, but that's an this is what we're seeing. We're seeing this, and then in the realm of pre-crime, now that we've got Operation Gladio season in the United States,
yeah.
right? That'll be the next part of that. It'll be, well, we're looking at your health records, your mental health records, right? Because that's an inference you can make on it and make from it, and they can make it based on, the ed tech or the med tech, and then that would be the result of that, right? It'd be a pre-crime thing.
Things have been moving extremely fast, especially when you look at the development of AI. Lots has changed since just the last time we spoke. There have been some concerning stories come out about people's relationships with AI, some of the interactions, and some of the responses that are coming out of these AI programs. Psychosis, now these new mental disorders from interacting with AI. It's gotten pretty crazy, but I'd love to get your thoughts on where we're at with that and how advanced we're really looking with the AI that we're interacting with versus what maybe they have in military industrial systems or what we're not aware of.
Yeah, well, so as far as the interpersonal, that's not the right word to use because that would suggest that the AI is a person. But the human effects of AI on human AI interaction, maybe that's the best way to say that. That bot that I mentioned, so it's called Anna. By the way, I think the reason why it's called Anna is because it's short for analytics. So it's like wink, wink, like that's its real purpose. But if you go on the company website for Upswing, and then they have a demo for its bot. Now, I believe it's only text based. Like, I don't think it actually has a verbal. So you have to type and then it types back. But they showcase what's supposed to be a student interacting with it, and by the time it's hyper affirmative. Everything, it's like, to me, it's like patronizing. I mean, it's talking now. Maybe if it's a younger student, that might be appropriate, but I don't necessarily think that's appropriate for a college level student. It's like, oh, it's okay. Like, literally, like, you can't hear it, but like the phrasing, you could almost hear the intonation. Yeah. Well, by the end of it, and this is how the ad. This is their idea of a promotional. I mean, if you want an insight into like being, not attached or dissociated from like normal people, like by the end of it, the student is, I don't remember if it says "I love you" explicitly, but it does heart emojis. It's like, thank you so much. You care so much about me. So it's like, so the student is having an emotional bond with the bot, which is supposed to be representing the authority figure, so to speak, or the teacher or the tutor. So this is another area where, like, again, right, as a teacher, I can't ask students about their health records. As a teacher, I can't and should not be bonding like that with my students, right? There shouldn't be any emotional attachment like that. Certainly not any, right, heart emojis, right? So like these lines that teachers should never be crossing, well, it's totally okay for the bot to do that. In the meantime, you're saying that this thing is designed to help the student with mental health, but what do you think happens when a human being becomes emotionally attached to a bot? Like, you don't think that causes mental problems, especially in developing populations, right? Whether it's K through 12 or even early college, right? When a lot of people might not be fully socialized, so to speak, right? Socially developed, meaning, right, like their abilities to like interact with people without being uncomfortable or socially awkward, have social anxiety, things like that, right? Like, if you haven't sort of worked through that yet, but you got a bot that always affirms everything you say and always makes you feel good, and feels like you get a lot of what you sort of need. I mean, 'cause human beings, we're social creatures, right? We need to have some kind of human interaction. But if you can get sort of the same biochemical effects of that from a bot, and then you're probably going to spend less time with human beings. So on top of the fact that you're bonding with the bot, you're dissociating from human beings, all under the guise of helping and personalizing. And I just cannot, I don't have the data to prove this yet. I don't have the metrics, but I don't think I need a whole lot of, I don't think I need a whole spreadsheet to accurately infer that this is going to have certainly more negative effects than positive effects. You know what I mean? So
there's some that speculate that AI is being utilized in ways that the general population would never be aware of, in somewhat nefarious ways, possibly planning high impact events, things of this nature. What are your thoughts about how capable AI is, especially the AI that we're not allowed to interact with?
Well, I don't know how much I can speculate on like the power of. I'm sure I'm sure that whatever we have, just like any point in history, is right, not what they got, right? Because what we got needs to be scalable and profitable and all that, right? So like back in the days when the original computers, you see like pictures of J.W. Forrester, who came up with systems dynamics, sitting in front of like an entire room of like magnetic tape reels and stuff, and like our smartphones can do more than that now. Like, but had that stuff been pocket sized back then, it probably would have been in people's pockets, right? And so, I mean, I imagine that there's systems they have that, right, just scalably, in terms of scalability and profitability, it's not feasible to hand out to the public. But as far as like, let's just say like social engineering at a larger scale. If you hook these systems up to social media, you can sort of, in the same way that you can do it with a particular school or an individual, you can look at things like not just, broadcast media propaganda was a one-way thing. So the only way you could get a sense of like whether or not your propaganda was working was to do like different polls. And then even that, how accurate is that? Because people are self-reporting and you don't know if what they're saying is basically what they really think. Maybe they're saying something different because they know it's going to go on the forum or they're in front of a camera. But the social media, right? I think this is why Twitter was designed to be the short. I mean, it's different now. But remember, it used to be you only had so many characters. What it's trying to do is elicit immediate responses, right? Sort of stimulus response, reflexive act, right? That gets a better sense of the affective system, meaning the emotions. Like, what do you have strong feelings about? One way or another, whether, obviously rage and fear being some of those stronger motivators. So you can see that on an individual scale, but you can see it in group scale. You can go left wing, right wing, Republican, Democrat. You can go race, gender, class, sexuality. You could go generations, all these different conflicts that, right, are basically the entire ecosystem of social media. And based on that, you can look at numbers and you can go, oh, and then you can go, well, what are the buzzwords or keywords that are associated with the values of these groups and the values of these groups? How can you amplify that with bots and therefore polarize those contentions? Or how can you attach those values to a candidate or a movement or a policy, right? And then they can do this in real time. This is what's known as action research, which is a concept that basically was formed by Kurt Lewin. He was one of these Frankfurt School guys. He was also at the Macy Cybernetics conferences where they laid out the theoretical framework for AI, right, on the feedback loops and all that stuff. So where the action research works, it's basically, same way any feedback work, but feedback loop works, except in a systems dynamics, right? And so you do something, action, right? So maybe you put out, you have some big account put out a tweet, and then you see how people react. And then if they react the way you want them to, then you reinforce that. Right. And so it's there's two steps after. It's action, something, and then back to action again. And so, with social media, I think you can do that very much in real time. And if you look at something like, the Rand Corporation developed something called scenario planning. It was Herman Kahn. I can't remember the exact decade, somewhere between the 50s and 60s, I want to say. But it's basically what it does is it takes your systems dynamics, just looking at it started with supply chain dynamics, right? And so it's looking at everything from like extraction of the raw materials to manufacturing to putting it into the stores, distributing into all the way to the consumer, right? And looking at how all those pieces work in a system, right? They've done this with like limits to growth. They did this with environmental dynamics and in context of population dynamics. But we could do this in terms of socio-political dynamics. So the fact that, right, they have systems for doing this. One of the most famous examples is, one of the most well-known examples would be, you and your audience probably remember the the lockstep document was sort of what it was colloquially known. But the title it's something like Scenarios for the Future of Technology and something. And it's a scenario planning document. If you open it up, you'll see they have all of them are usually it goes on a quadrant like this. So you have like an ideal and the most ideal outcome, the least ideal outcome. Then you got these two that are like kind of intermediates, right? And so what you do is, right, you want your systems to evolve in a particular direction on that quadrant. And then what you do is through the social media and the AI analytics and the action research, right, you put out stimuli and you see what the response is, and you see, are we getting closer to our ideal scenario or are we moving towards one of these other scenarios? Now, back to Rockefeller, the scenario planning document, that was done in 2010. In 2020, we basically ran the script of one of those quadrants. So we have empirical evidence that, yes, they use scenario planning to manage systems dynamics, and they can plan things ahead in as much as 10 years. Okay, so if you know that they laid out the feedback loop schematics at Macy's Cybernetics conferences in the early 40s, and you know that the rise of venture capital comes shortly thereafter, and you realize what's venture capital? Well, that's a lot of it coming out of basically, like NQTEL, CIA, but it's monies that get thrown at startups that basically, again, these are companies that for the most part are not readily scalable or readily distributable to the broader public, right? So you got to prop them up with monies that you may or may not get a return on, which is why a lot of that money basically comes from CIA. But the idea is they've had 70 years knowing Moore's law, knowing that, right, what is the exponential rate at which the transistors become more efficient. So like at what point, from basically the get-go, they knew how many decades it would take before they could get, the theory was already laid out. It was just a matter of when is the hardware going to get to the point where we can not only process all the data, but track and trace it as well. So you've got all those things. They've got a clear timeline. They've got methods for planning across those timelines. They've got methods for managing large systems across those timelines. And then they've got AI systems to track their progress towards the outcomes. And so I think that when you see something like, 9/11 and the timing of it, I mean, that created the sort of flashpoint where we had crises that sort of hurried people along and gave them reasons to adopt some of these dystopic technologies that if they weren't scared, again, right, being motivated by rage and fear, they wouldn't have adopted them. And so, in the meantime, other than sort of laying out the scenario planning and the action research is largely just keeping people at each other's throats and otherwise distracted through culture wars.
In my perspective, there are two essential realities that a person can focus on. One is online, what they're seeing in social media and on the TV, and one is the real world, interacting with real people. That's the one I'm interested. The one online is fueled by theatrics, propaganda, psychological operations, and a whole realm of fantasies. But I really enjoy getting perspectives of what's happening in real people's lives, what people are noticing about the collective reaction to things, interactions on a real world basis, physically talking with someone one-on-one, engaging where people are at with everything that's unfolding. You're a teacher, you interact with young people. If you listen to what the media is telling us, they'll have you believe that everyone is just becoming insane and flipping out. They have so many different perspectives of where we're at with the mental health of the collective. And I look around and I still see a somewhat normal world when I go out and talk and interact with people. But I'd love to get your perspective on where we're at in reality versus what they're trying to feed us.
Yeah, I'll say that, after lockdowns, I finally started going back into human space to do tutoring largely because of the bot. So it was like, the main thing I guess we have to offer, because we still do virtual human to human virtual. But I guess, the administration that contracted with Upswing, I guess at least what we have now is what the bot cannot do is be a physical human being in physical space. So, but for the last 5 years, largely because of lockdowns and the mandatory health treatment, I stayed online even after they said it was okay to come back, because I didn't know, what they were going to do. I didn't know if they were going to roll everything back, and then I was going to have to play musical chairs between my house and the school, and not know, it was just, I'd rather just stick to one medium, and that way, whatever they do, I don't have to make adjustments. But being back, no, I don't sense any, it's been 5 years. I don't know that you would notice a huge difference, although, that technically is getting close to almost a new generation, almost. I don't sense anything different as far as the average student, you know what I mean? And it's like, like the other sense you get is like all these kids are, woke and, this, that's not the case. You know what I mean? Like, and even the students that do come in and identify differently will just say, like, it's not really a thing. Like, it doesn't, you just treat them like a human being, and it's not a thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, the interactions are just as, the same as they've been. So, that's, I'll say that. I'll say also, though, that, to your point, I remember when I first visited Charlotte Iserbeet in 2020. So this was like at the peak of lockdowns. And when I drove there, it was like, ghost town. But I was watching the news, and it's like riots here and riots there, and Chaz, and like, I didn't know. I never really traveled a lot. I mean, I never really traveled at all. I had family in Missouri that we'd go see every once in a while. That's about the furthest I'd been. So, I didn't know what kind of detours I was going to have to take through towns. And I was nervous, thinking like, oh, I'm going to, like, when I come into, when I go through New York, what if I got to go through the city, and am I going to run? Dude, when I drove across the country, it was like, if you didn't turn your TV on, you wouldn't have you'd have no inclination that everything was so chaotic. You'd have no inclination, and one other thing I'll say, this is more about faculty, which is, I don't know, hopefully this isn't just a blip on the radar, but I've noticed, I walked past an office, and I heard some people complaining about AI a little bit. I've seen a lot of people embracing it, like, oh, we gotta find a way to make it work for us, which in some ways, I mean, I'm of the opposite mind. I'd like to just abstain from it, but I'm not. I've said to a lot of people, like, I said today, we're getting close to the end of the book. I don't know if you can put that toothpaste back in the bag. So I'm not going to say it's a bad idea let's at least try to shape it so that it reflects, our values. Maybe, if there's no chance that it's going away, I can't say that that's a bad idea. But at least hearing people, I've tried to warn, I've been talking about this for close to 10 years now. And it's like, now that it's on their doorstep, it's like, now people are like freaking out, and it's kind of like, dude, it's, now to me, it's like it's the equivalent of somebody that doesn't, I'm a martial artist, somebody that doesn't put in the hours in the gym, and you think you're going to, like, on game day, you're going to show up in there and perform. It's not going to happen, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying, I mean, I guess you got to do what you can do. but I will say, yeah, people have been skeptical. And I won't say any more than that. There's a few people that if I say too much more, I wouldn't want them to be out there publicly like that. But there's people that I've talked to that I can see that they're doing things to at least try to hold the line in ways that I hadn't seen before, as far as faculty and colleagues. So that's a positive thing. And I don't know, maybe maybe we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
Well, you mentioned a few times that we're almost at the end of your book, in a sense that everything that is unfolding, you've warned about a while back. How should we navigate this? And is there any other important aspects that we didn't touch on yet that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, there's one point that I think is worth making, and then we can sort of talk about solutions here. But this is a good way to sort of put bookends on the whole social credit, fintech, edtech, all the pieces of this puzzle, and the way the AI, and I mentioned that impact investing works. So what we're moving towards is essentially the securitization of human beings, right? And I'm going to explain this the way I always do, which if you heard me explain it before, it's going to be the long version of the story. But I like to tell it this way because when I tell it this way, the look on people's faces, I could see that it lands in ways in ways that I hadn't articulated prior. So, I'm not a fintech guy. I'm not a financial, money is not my focus. So, to make sure that I was understanding a lot of the fintech financial jargon accurately for this article, I contacted Mark Goodwin, who's the former editor of Bitcoin Magazine. Everybody should check out his series on the chain. I can't remember but it's all the titles have something like the chain in it, and it's sort of a historical analysis of sort of the blockchain crypto industry and how it's moving towards this stablecoin economy and other features. So when I talked to him, we were talking about whether or not the stable coins are going to be classified as either a commodity or a security. And so, me being, not super familiar, I'm like, so just clarify for me what's the difference between a commodity and a security. What makes a security a security? And he says the best explanation, they said they call it it's like the Howie Farms or the Howie Orchards test. Okay, and so back in, I think it was like the 30s, this guy Howie something, he had these orchards, and instead of selling land, he was selling futures, futures on the fruit that would grow and the profits you would make from the fruit that would be grown and sold. Okay, so a security is something that is future expected profits that are not baked into the asset itself. So the land obviously can appreciate on its own, but that's not a security. That's just normal appreciation. The security is added value in some capacity. So the way they're going to securitize human beings is they're going to extrapolate or monetize or quantify the financial gains that are associated with the student's lifetime education workforce outcomes. Jesus. Okay, so basically what they do is they go like this. And if you look at like think tanks like American Enterprise Institute, they quantify it like this. So did Kamala Harris when she was putting parents in jail for truancy. The rationale was, well, if students are truant, eventually those students end up in jail. So instead of them ending up in jail, let's just put mom in jail, and then we'll get in front of it, and maybe that student won't go to jail. And well, you can monetize that, or you can quantify it in terms of dollars spent, because that costs, right? It costs money to run prisons, right? And it costs maybe that student, and other factors could be students that don't do good in school, they get mental health issues, or they need to be retrained for job. All of these could put a drain on public monies. And then conversely, if a student does really well in their career path, then they're going to put money into the economy. So, right, what they do is they basically securitize those future expected earnings or savings based on the student's outcomes, learning outcomes. Okay, securitize that, put it in a bond, attach the bond to the student, and then you have these impact investment firms basically sponsor, in other words, gamble on the student outcomes, and then get a return on that profit. So for the impact investment firms, impact investing is basically you put money up front to help achieve certain social outcomes. It could fall on the ESG scale, environmental, social governance, could be workforce, healthcare, education outcomes, could be for particular populations, marginalized communities. And in education, they're called pay for success. So you put money up front, right, for this to achieve these educational outcomes. If those outcomes are achieved to the extent to which they are, the firm can earn money back from the government. And if they exceed the outcomes, they can even earn a profit. Okay. And for that company that I mentioned, Upswing, so I looked it up. It's funded by multiple, not just venture capital firms, but impact investment firms. One of them being social finance, which I wrote about in my first piece, Trump Ed 2025. And I also wrote about in, I think we talked about it on your show last time, UNESCO Study 11. I think I showcased some of the images of that. And so social finance, I did a video late. I don't know if it was later, but I eventually did a video on that, kind of breaking it down. And I showed that social finance partners with FutureLearn. FutureLearn is part of the UK's Open University. It's an online university, open online school. Back in the day, it was like audio visual. So they didn't have internet, so they'd send you books and tapes and DVDs and stuff. But so social finance, it's a social impact investment company. So right, for Anna at the school, this is my guess. The reason why they want it, it's not just that it's cheaper than to pay hourly teachers, right? It's that it will enable them to gather the data to get the impact investments, right? So that's why it's called Anna Analytics. It's gonna it boasts. It shows you all the different metrics, right? And it tells you it's not just for the individual, but it's for the institution. So the institution saves money. Then they get this data. You need the AI to get that data, right? You're not going to do it with spreadsheets, just a human beings crunching numbers. So to scale all that data on an individual level, on a group level, from the fintech inputs to all of that, you need AI to make all those calculations at real time. So you need the AI to get the data. You need the data to get the impact investment grant. The impact investment firm needs the data to get the money back from the government. So what you're seeing is that all these pieces of this puzzle are part of a new supply chain ecosystem. And so that's essentially what we're looking at in terms of the end game with the fintech. So
I was just going to say, how do we navigate this? What solutions could we offer?
Yeah, I mean, my thing is this. Like I say, we're way down the pipe here, but I think that this is a simple way to put it. I think if you approach the AI and the fintech and the blockchain and all this stuff, now it doesn't just have to be in education, just be in your everyday life. If you approach that stuff, you treat it like, especially for your audience and people that are they're in that listen to alternative media, that have alternative understandings of the propaganda that we live in, right? You probably didn't get your mandatory treatment, and if you didn't do that, then you might have, right? That was a challenging thing to do. Obviously, it wasn't the easier thing to do in a lot of ways, especially if you got fired, especially if you lost friends and family, especially all these things, right? But you did it because it was the right thing and it was the better thing, right? So if you treat the voucher monies, the ESAs, the scholarship monies, if you treat the blockchain, the digital wallet, if you treat the AI like that needle, just think about it like that needle, whatever you're going to get, however, it might make your life a little less, there'd be a little less friction in your daily life, but you didn't do it for that. So it's going to have the same repercussions. And by the way, I mean, there was obviously the biological consequences of what happens if you get that. But part of what a lot of people were also worried about was that health passport, that thing was going to be the first part of this ledger that we're talking about, and that they're going to add to it all this other stuff. And then that was going to lead to your biopsychosocial digital ID, social credit technocracy. Yeah. So that's why it's going to come with similar dangers, and it's going to end. It will take us to the same destination. So you can work out the particulars of how to hold that line on your own. I don't think I need to, I don't even think I need to itemize all that, but I think if you orient yourself in that way, I think you will find the spiritual fortitude to do the thing you need to do.
Right on. John, this was fantastic information. Thank you so much again. Before I let you go, remind the audience how they can find out more about you.
That's schoolworldorder.info is my website. That's got links to all the social media. I'm Taoist Professor on X. Book is you can find at tryingday.com. There's a link to that on the homepage of my website. Otherwise, most recent stuff goes up on Unlimited Hangout.
Excellent. I'll have those links easily accessible for everyone. John, we'll definitely have to do this again sooner than last time. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will talk again tomorrow. We'll see y'all then.